Loved ones, my name is Bill Norton. I'll introduce myself briefly in a moment. I'm unimportant. I'm presenting this video to you because I want to talk to you about a subject of enormous significance to those of you who are considering going to college this fall, whether you're returning students or whether you would be incoming freshmen. In my view, that topic is profoundly important to the millions of you who are impacted by that decision. So clearly there's a great deal of uncertainty. For example, the Cal State system has 23 or 24 campuses. It's already announced closure in terms of residential classes. The joy of living in the country is ag equipment. So the Cal State system has already announced campus closures for the fall. They'll be doing everything online. I really expect that because California has proven that it's a bundle of bad decisions. Alternatively, just in the last couple of days, Notre Dame in Indiana has announced that it's going to have a residential campus experience, classes face-to-face this fall, and Notre Dame intends to start a little bit earlier than normal, perhaps 2 or 3 weeks earlier than normal, and finish the semester by Thanksgiving. So my own university, I teach at a major university in coastal Georgia. When I say major university, we have a couple of campuses and perhaps 27,000 students scattered across them. My own university has every intention of resuming classes face-to-face on campus in the fall, but we have to plan for the contingency that we may not be able to do that. So I get it that there's an enormous amount of uncertainty, and that has huge implications for your decision. And again, for those of you, whether you're returning as upperclassmen or whether you're coming as freshmen, huge implications. So my objective is really pretty simple. I simply want to share perspective with you, what I think is a really well-informed assessment of these competing choices, online or residential. I would not in 5 lifetimes tell you what to do. I don't tell my children what to do. I share perspectives and then I want them to make a good decision. That is precisely what I want you to do. I want you to make a decision that's well-informed and it serves your best interests. So again, by way of introduction, my name is Bill Norton. I'm a college professor. I am midway through my 28th year in the front of a classroom, but I have a rich and meaningful life outside of academia. I'm former military. I'm a recovering CPA. I practiced in Atlanta for 17 years. So again, I have multiple degrees. I've taught at 3 universities. I have 2 kids in college right now. So I clearly have domain knowledge. And I simply want to share that perspective with you, and I want you to decide what is in your best interests. Now, going to college, fundamentally, there are 3 choices. One is you can be in residence. You can live on campus or near campus, and you can take classes face-to-face. That is the classic, the traditional, the way of doing it. Alternatively, you can take classes online. You can sit somewhere in your footy pajamas and bang on a laptop and stare at a monitor. There is a third choice, and that's you could be a commuter student. I was for my undergraduate degree. But commuter students only exist in large metro areas that have universities. If you live in a Chicago or an Atlanta or Philadelphia or Los Angeles, there are metro universities that you can attend. And being a commuter student is strikingly like having a permanent part-time job. At a particular time and day of the week, you drive to campus, you attend class, you have group meetings, you might do some library research or something related to that, and you drive home. There's absolutely no connection. You're not a part of the university community. So I'm really not going to focus on commuter students. I want to talk to you about the virtues and the drawbacks of residential face-to-face classes and compare that with an online teaching format. So let me start, if I may, just by talking to you about what I think is virtuous about face-to-face education. The first thing that's true is for most students, to go to college and live on or near campus is the first time that they've ever lived away from home. Now, to be sure, there are exceptions to that. I'm prior service. I spent 4.5 years on active duty, and then I went to college. So clearly, there are non-traditional students, but the student populations on university campuses are overwhelmingly traditional students, students between the age of perhaps 18 and 24. So for that really large cohort of people, going to college is the first time they've ever lived away from home. And that's a very, very big deal, and I'll circle back to that in a moment. I want to talk to you about costs, and when I say costs, I want you to understand what's virtuous and what's a downside. The only significant cost that you incur if you go to some university and you're a residential student, you live on campus or near campus, is the cost of lodging. That's it. Your tuition is the same, fees will be the same. Meals are irrelevant because you have to eat no matter where you are. So it matters not if you have a university meal plan or you're going to McDonald's and getting a cheese hamburger. Scary thought, but nonetheless. Tuition typically is the same per credit hour. That's the situation at my university. I do want to point out, and this is not universally true, but there are a number of universities that essentially charge a premium. They charge a higher dollar rate per credit hour if you take courses online. The administrators there naively think that you're willing to pay an upcharge for convenience, and the reality is many people are. So costs, again, I want to talk to you about the virtues, and that is that on some cases there's no difference. There's no difference on tuition, there's no difference on meals. Clearly, lodging is an out-of-pocket expense. The third thing that I think is virtuous about going to classes face-to-face is when you live away from home, you're putting yourself in a situation where you grow, you develop, you mature, you get life skills. And unsurprisingly, you don't get that in an online situation. The reality is you get life lessons on a daily basis. Your car doesn't start. Oh dear, problem that must be solved. You have to answer an alarm clock. You have to learn how to competently manage hygiene. I can promise you, I've seen this for a long time. It will only happen once that someone sitting next to you says, "You stink." You'll have to learn how to live within a budget. It really doesn't matter who your sponsor is, whether you have a family that's supporting you in college, whether you're doing it yourself, whether you're a former military and you have the post 9/11 bill. It doesn't matter who your sponsor is. You'll have to live within a budget. And the next thing that's true about this daily life lessons thing, the value of this developmental experience, is that you'll have to make dozens of decisions a day, and you'll discover immediately that almost all decisions have consequences, and we never get to pick them. What if, for example, I went to a friend's house tonight, and he's going to grill out and have a couple of beers, and I hop in my truck, and on the way home, a sheriff's deputy stops me for something innocent. And he smells alcohol in my breath, I blow .8 on a BAC meter, boom. Bracelets, stripes, and a lot of new boyfriends. And thousands of dollars in cost to fight the DUI. All decisions have consequences, and we rarely get to pick them. And that's part of that developmental thing, part of those life lessons that comes really as part of the treasure of going to college. I also want to point out the value of social interactions. If you're on campus, clearly you're interacting with peers. There will be people whom you treasure, people who are lifelong friends. There'll be people whom you intensely dislike. Well, that describes life, doesn't it? You get a chance to meet with peers, and we are so different. Yes, we are all Homo sapien, but we come through different traditions, whether it's family units, faith, the life experiences that we have. So there's a lot of value in interacting with peers, interacting with them. Not chat groups, not Zoom meetings, interacting with them. I want you to think about interactions with faculty. The reality is, the single most important part of my job is not standing in the front of the classroom delivering content. It's not banging out research papers. It's not doing service activities for the university or the community. Those are all fundamentally important to what I do. The single most important thing I do 250 times a semester is interact with students one-on-one. to respond to their needs and concerns. Whether we're talking about career paths, or grad school, or resumes, or interview questions, or how to dress for an interview, or considering competing job offers. That stuff, it has such value. And my point is that if you're on campus, if you're face-to-face, if you're interacting with faculty, you will develop relationships with them. You cannot do that in a digital platform. If you're on campus, face-to-face, you will develop relationships. Some faculty will willingly become mentors. Some faculty will willingly be recommendors. They'll write recommendation letters and act as references and guide you. I want to point out something that I hear often in life, and I've heard it from people of every age. This is not something that's limited to college students in their early 20s. People very, very commonly say, it's all who you know. Loved ones, that is precisely backwards. It is never who you know. It's who knows you. If I know you and I think highly of you, if you have good skills, a good attitude, a good work ethic, I will kick down doors for you. I'll make phone calls, write recommendation letters, do anything I can. But my point is, the only time that we're going to have that sort of a relationship, any kind of relationship, is if we interact. If I get to know you and I think highly of you. So when I talked about interactions, the first thing I mentioned is the significance of peers and how that's developmental. But think too about the benefit of interacting with faculty. We don't necessarily possess great wisdom, but we have a lot of life experiences and we have a useful perspective. So that's something that sort of enriches your college experience. And then the third thing is, there is no doubt that you'll interact with the community. Local restaurants, local retailers, you may join a church, you may do some service activities. You will embed yourself in this community, and I promise you, it's a very big deal. And none of those relationships, peers, faculty, community, none of them are achievable in an online format. End of discussion. That it simply can't happen. So now, I'm not quite through on the virtues of face-to-face. I want to talk to you briefly about assignments that are carried out by groups or teams, class assignments. It's improbable that you'll have any like that as freshmen or sophomores, but when you are upper division, when you're juniors and seniors, it wouldn't be uncommon for you to have 4 or 5 group projects per semester. Well, the thing that I think is significant about that is, to a large degree, those group interactions give you a preview. It gives you some experience with what will happen working with others in organizational settings. Because when you leave, I can only think of 2 jobs where people don't work in organizational settings. If you are either a poet or a sniper, you work alone. But everybody else works in organizations, whether you're mechanics or airline pilots or physicians or HVAC techs, it doesn't matter. We all are embedded in organizations, and working with groups and teams will give you a significant preview. What you'll find in organizational settings dynamics that are very similar to your college setting. You'll find people in the group who are non-contributors. They are oxygen thieves. They just sit around and they convert oxygen into carbon dioxide. You'll find people who are combative. They don't add any value, but they are disruptive. You'll find groups that devolve into dyads, little nodes of 2, where you and I like each other and we don't like you because you're ugly and your mother dresses you funny. You'll see intra-group tension, which is precisely what you'll see in organizational settings. You'll find that you're accountable. You're accountable to your group members, and you're accountable for the delivery of this project. And you have no choice but to manage deadlines. And I don't just mean the due date of the project. I mean the process. You and I will decide on who has what drafts done at what time. We'll meet, we'll review them, we'll critique them, we'll improve them, we'll make decisions on what needs to be done next. We'll meet again to work collaboratively. There are a lot of intermediate deadlines to almost any project. I get it that there are virtual teams, but virtual teams are not remotely equivalent to teams that meet face-to-face, not on any dimension. And there's another thing that is virtuous about face-to-face education, and that's andragogy. And that is so important that I'll come back to that in a couple of minutes. So now I want to swing to the drawbacks. What's the downside of being residential, living on or near campus and attending classes face to face? I mean this sincerely. This is an objective assessment. I can discern no drawbacks except the cost of lodging. That's it. No downside, except you pay for a dorm room or an apartment and the related sort of costs. So let me shift now to online education. And I want to start, as I did with face-to-face, talking about the virtues of online education. The first thing that's true, and this is one of the reasons that many people go down that path, is there is an element of flexibility or convenience with respect to time. Oftentimes, you may have a deadline a week out or something like that, but you have a great deal of autonomy, a great deal of freedom over what you do and when. So a lot of people value that kind of flexibility. The second thing, which is virtuous, you incur no expense whatsoever for campus lodging, either on campus or near campus. The third thing that's virtuous for many people is that if you go to school online, you are still home-based. You're embedded in your family unit. You do not leave your community. That means that you're still connected to your church, your friends, you have access to family, you may have a job, part-time or full-time, so there's no disruption in your life. You just have this added responsibility of staring at a monitor and banging on a keyboard. So clearly, there are some virtues to online education. I want to share with you what I think are drawbacks to online education. The first is you have absolutely zero, that would be the big bagel, zero connection to the campus community, to the university. You log in, do whatever you're supposed to do, and you log out. You have no opportunity to be part of sports in any capacity. You can't be a spectator. I go and watch our rifle team compete in its matches. I go to football games and baseball games and other things like that. A lot of kids treasure the experience of being a spectator in this vibrant kind of a college activity. But you can't be a student athlete. You can't be and you can't do anything with club sports, with intramurals. You can't have pickup games with your new friends, fraternity brothers, whatever the case may be. Again, zero on the involvement in sports. The same thing is true with clubs and organizations. You have no meaningful involvement because you're not there. You can't be on a dance team or whatever the case may be. Of course, in my case, it would be interpretive dance. Yes, I minored in that in college. The third thing that I think is a drawback is you, the incoming student, suffer in the sense that you have no opportunity to grow, no opportunity to develop as a mature, self-sufficient, functioning human being because you're still embedded in your home setting. That isn't bad, but literally you have no opportunity to develop. A fourth thing that's true, and this is often true, not universally, but often true, many universities upcharge tuition. For example, this is just an example. If the standard rate for face-to-face education were $550 an hour, a lot of universities will charge $758, $850, because they realize many people are willing to pay for convenience, sitting around in their PJs, banging on a laptop. So that's not universally true, but it is often true. The second thing that's true, and I'll give you my university as an example. Clearly, we have kids who only do classes online, but it's about, I would imagine maybe 9% of our student population. And of course, I have no idea where these kids live. We have about 2,000 out of maybe 27,000 students who are only online, who do not do any kind of residential stuff. But if you take 4 credit hours or more, a full-time load at my place is 12 hours. Most kids take 15, but a full-time load is 12 hours. If you take 4 credit hours or more, you will literally every semester pay thousands of dollars in fees. You will pay athletic fees. You will pay fees to use the RAC. The RAC is an acronym for the Recreational Activity Center. It's a multi-million-dollar gym, climbing walls, dance studios, indoor pools, all kinds of stuff that kids really value. You'll pay for technology fees for tech that you don't get to use. Our kids, for example, I think get 1,500 pages of hard copy printing every semester. You'll pay the fees, but you won't get the benefit. You'll pay sustainability fees, which is sort of vague, and I get that. But I just want to share with you that on the money side, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you'll pay a premium on the tuition, and you'll also have this rope thrown around you where you're lassoed into paying literally thousands of dollars of fees a semester and no discernible benefit to you. So I want to shift now. I know I'm pushing this because I want this video to be a manageable length. I want you to enjoy it and get benefit out of it. I want to push now into a discussion of andragogy. Pedagogy deals with children as learners. I know nothing about pedagogy. I've never been an elementary school teacher or anything like that. I know a great deal about andragogy. I'm 28 years into this career, and clearly I still learn. I'm imperfect. I still make mistakes, but they tend to be modest, and I tend to recognize them and cure them quickly. So andragogy is the art and the science of dealing with adult learners. That would be you. Now, let me tell you the model of andragogy, and I hope I can do this in a way that's clear and compelling. Andragogy is a linear process. By that I mean first A, then B, then C. You don't do things simultaneously. The first part of andragogy is introduction. Someone with domain knowledge, somebody who is really competent in a given domain, the teacher, if you will, introduces concepts, introduces them, develops them, critiques them, that sort of thing. That's the first step, is introduction. The second thing is together, the instructor and the student do a process called exploration. This is a joint activity. We do it together in real time. And what we do is we discuss, explore. You critique, you challenge, you think, hey, Dr. Norton, we tried that at my place. It was a miserable failure. Or, I need clarification. I didn't quite understand that. Or is it possible we could use that technique, whatever it is, in this sort of an application? So the second part of andragogy is exploration. That is a joint activity between the learner and the teacher. The third part of andragogy is assimilation. That's on you. The teacher withdraws and you assimilate what you've learned. You may have to write papers, you may have to do projects. Clearly you'll be evaluated on it, some kind of a test. You'll think about how we apply this stuff. So andragogy, this notion about teaching adult learners, is a three-step process: introduction, exploration, assimilation. In online learning, all you get, I don't care if it's an Ivy, I don't care if it's what you think is the best university on the planet, all you get is 1/3 of the model. You get introduction. Somebody introduces concepts in a video or a PowerPoint presentation or something like that, and you stare at a video monitor. There's no opportunity to explore, and it's impossible to assimilate. When I say impossible, we have data. My college has a lot of high quality empirical data that suggests that very little learning takes place online, because online learning rips 2 of the 3 parts of andragogy away from you as adult learners. You don't get that joint exploration, and it's impossible to assimilate because you don't fully understand the concepts. You have read something, and that can be illuminating, but it always has limitations. Moreover, online learning has got enormous flaws. Distraction is one of them. We have empirical evidence, how people, absolutely every electronic device, period, tablets, laptops, phones, every electronic device is designed to require your interaction. You have to stare at it and bang on the screen or whatever the input device is. So electronic devices require your interaction, and you're no longer paying attention to what's going on. The other thing that's a sad reality of online education is cheating is rampant. My university, as most schools in this nation, this past spring, 9 weeks into the semester, all the face-to-face classes were canceled, the kids were sent home, and everything was transformed. Everything was lifted up and put in an online platform. And we learned about a week into that transition period that we had students that would, 5 or 6 kids would get together and schedule a Zoom meeting to take a test. And they'd go over the questions. What's the answer, number 41? Oh, it's A on the multiple choice thing, and it's on page 12 or whatever. That's just crushing to me. because people realize they can behave opportunistically, they behave that way. And the good news is they'll all go to jail. I promise you, if you're an ethical rat, if you have that predisposition, you're going to join some organization, and the moment you see a window, you're going to walk through it. And it'll involve money. You will be found out. You'll be fired. If it involves any significant amount of money, you'll be prosecuted. Oh dear. So there is justice. It's just sometimes deferred. So my assessment, this is not a concluding thought, but as I've talked to you about the differences and the similarities between online and face-to-face, my assessment is face-to-face, it's all the marks. Online is terribly deficient because you lack these growth and developmental opportunities, these life lessons, and you only get 1/3 of andragogy. You just get introduction. I know that's a cruel way to describe it, but face-to-face hits all the marks. Online is terribly deficient. So clearly, any decision you make is yours. It must be in your best interest. I believe for decades that all post-secondary education should give you a foundation. It should give you a platform so that you can have a wonderful life, living independently and with dignity. And I get it that sometimes your circumstances may influence your decision. You may be a caregiver. You may be part of a family business. I understand oftentimes that your circumstances will influence your decision. But I want to share a couple of closing thoughts. Here's the first one. I'm going to do this in sort of a question format, and I'm going to, like a goofball, I'm going to answer my own questions. Should you take a gap year? I would say, heck yes, if, this is a conditional yes, you should take a gap year if two things are true. You see the value of the residential experience, and you're going to use that year productively. You get to define what productively is. If it were me, here's a productive use of a gap year. I might work 2 jobs and just save a bucket full of money, so I've got a war chest. I've got a lot of savings, whatever that may mean. Alternatively, I grew up on a dairy farm, so I was pretty comfortable with being self-sufficient at a very young age. But a lot of you are big city kids. Many of you have probably never stepped off of concrete. So here's an idea. Call some rancher in Montana or Wyoming or somewhere like that and offer to work for that rancher for $5 an hour if the ranch will provide you with a bunkhouse, for sleep and hygiene, and they'll feed you 2 or 3 times a day. The benefits to you will be incalculable. You'll develop self-sufficiency, skills and experiences that you've never had before and will never have again. So I don't care how you define productively, but take a gap year if 2 things are true. You think you want a residential classroom experience and you're going to use the year productively. If you're going to sit in your home wearing sweats, banging on a game controller for 6 hours a day, you, loved ones, are going to be, you're going to put yourself in a state of arrested development. Your little pea brain won't work, your body's going to go soft, your social skills will go to nothing. Don't be that person. Use the year productively if you take a gap year. New topic. Question again. Should you obsess about reputational universities? I will never understand why people think they have to go to Michigan State or wherever it is that they have to go. Michigan State's a fine school. But should you obsess about reputational universities? I would say absolutely not. That's not even a point of discussion or debate. Here's something I want to make clear to you. I know you'll realize this, but I just want to make it abundantly clear. Reputation is not an asset that you possess. It's not an asset that an institution possesses. You and I don't own reputation. Reputation is a perception that others have of us. We don't own it. It's not an asset. We don't possess it. It's a perception other people have of us. What if I drive by your house in a Buick? You have some perception of that. You might say, oh, poor man. I don't know what you're going to say. We don't own, possess reputations. Here's a very useful example. Um, there are a lot of people who think being cool is somehow a good thing to do. Well, here's the reality. Here's our shared reality. If you think being cool matters, I want to share with you that the correct spelling of cool is FOOL. If you think being cool matters, you are deeply troubled, and you probably need counseling. Does it matter that people whom you don't know, that you have to seek their validation? You want those Twitter morons thinking, loving you or hating you? No. Make no effort to be cool, loved ones. Make an effort to be authentic. Second thing I'd share with you about reputational universities, the educational experience will not be the same as a good public university. I promise you that. Because if you look at these R1 schools where the faculty are held to extraordinary standards of scholarship, they're not going to be in the classroom. You're going to get some grad student with zero social skills and no life experience standing in the front of the room droning. The only people who truly care about a university's reputation are the people who are alumni. They're the only people for whom it matters because they are products of that system, wherever that system may be. Please don't base any of your decisions on reputation. Look to a university on merit. What are the programs, quality of instruction, job opportunities, the associated costs? Consider it on merit. The last thing I'll say to you about reputational universities is accreditation is a much better metric. It's a much better measure than anything reputational. People manipulate reputations, and we discover sadly that some of the most highly regarded universities have falsified data to jack up their standings and reputational indices. For example, I teach in a college of business, and accreditation for good B schools is done through an organization called the AACSB. I can never remember what it stands for. But the AACSB is a body that sets uncommonly high standards for business schools. In fact, it means something like American Association of Schools and Colleges for Business. But the point is, in the entire United States, there are only about 600 colleges, B schools, that are accredited by the AACSB. There are 8 Ivies. 2 of them, Princeton and Brown, are not accredited by the AACSB. I verified that fact earlier this afternoon before I developed my final notes for this presentation. So 2 of the 8 Ivies are not accredited? Oh dear. So much for reputation. So be sensitive. There's accreditation for good nursing programs, for engineering programs. I don't care where you go, but if a school is not accredited, the degree you would earn from that school is essentially worthless. An employer will look at that and say, okay, this resume goes right to the shredder. So accreditation is a vastly better standard of measure than anything sort of a reputational index. So I've shared with you earlier that I believe all post-secondary education should equip you for a career. I simply want you to get that education in an environment that's supportive and developmental. You and you alone get to decide. And I wish you every good wish.